Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to their installment of Scout Selections here for Saturday, March 7th. Before we get into today's play of the day, a quick recap of what happened yesterday. Unfortunately, college basketball continues to be a bit unkind to us as we ended up picking up a loss with Loyola Chicago minus 5.5. They ended up losing outright in overtime. They were up 14 at the half, and I believe 18 with 15 minutes to go. They were up 6 with about 30 seconds left. They went 7 of 17 from the foul line, and then ended up losing outright in overtime. There's not really much else to say. When it rains, it pours, I guess. We've found multiple ways to lose games at the last minute over the last week or so. We had the Zion prop where it didn't score for the last 9 minutes. We had the Oklahoma State game in which they missed 3 free throws in the final minute and they only won by 6. And we also lost yesterday when Loyola probably should have won that game easily if they didn't completely fall apart in the last 15 minutes. But either or, for today's play of the day, we're going to be switching it up and we're not going to be talking about college basketball. Looking at a couple of games in college basketball I thought about, but overall wasn't really that interested. I'll give out some leans on those, but for the most part, didn't really like anything, particularly on the card. Nothing really stood out to me. So for that reason, we're going to be talking about something else. And the play that's actually going to be on a total in the XFL, and it's going to be on a matchup between the New York Guardians and the Dallas Renegades, and we like the under 37, which is available on FanDuel at minus 110. Now, even though this total sounds a bit low at 37, first of all, it is actually not that low compared to the rest of the market, just based on the fact that, for example, DC and St. Louis has a total of 38.5, and Wildcats Vipers has a total of 41. So if this isn't like the NFL, you're not automatically looking at 37 and thinking that this is immediately low. Is it lower than the other two? Yes, but I think it is warranted based on the matchup that we have in front of us. That game will be taking place at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. First of all, the New York Guardians have been an absolute disaster offensively. Doesn't really seem like it matters which quarterback they throw in. It used to be McGloin, then he got benched, and then they ended up bringing in Luis Perez, who ended up getting the win in his first start last week. However, Perez, despite the fact that he was pretty efficient and they ended up winning by the score of 17-14 against the Wildcats, he really doesn't throw the ball downfield at all. Perez ended up completing 18 of 26 pass attempts, which does sound pretty solid as that ended up leading to a completion percentage of 69%. However, he only had 150 yards passing, which means that he is averaging 5.8 yards per attempt. So in other words, he's just throwing a bunch of dump-off passes, and he's not really willing to stretch the ball downfield. And I think that should lead to a lot of long drives, which should eat up a ton of clock. Perez also, even though he doesn't turn the ball over, he doesn't really have a lot of quick strike ability, as he mostly just throws dump-off passes, as I just said. Plus, the Guardians also ran the ball a lot with Victor, as he ended up having 82 rushing yards on 18 attempts, along with Tim Cook, who had 8 attempts as well. I think the Guardians will look to try to continue their strategy from last week, which was to try to control the time possession and to just move the chains on the ground, and through some short dump-off passes to move the chains, which should eat up a ton of clock. Meanwhile, the Renegades, offensively, they have struggled, but there is another reason why I think that they will struggle even more offensively today, and that is because of the fact that their starting quarterback, Landry Jones, despite the fact that he has underachieved so far this season, he does still have pretty solid arm talent considering the rest of the quarterbacks in the actual league. He is officially out for this game as he is dealing with a knee injury, which means that backup quarterback Philip Walker will be getting the start in this game. And the reason why I like the under in this spot is because of the fact that in a very limited sample size, Philip Nelson will be getting the start in this game. Nelson was absolutely terrible in week 1. For those of you who don't remember, Landry Jones was actually not able to play in week 1, which caused Nelson to get all the snaps. Even though he completed 33 of his 42 pass attempts, he only had 218 passing yards, which is the equivalent of 5.2 yards per attempt, and the Renegades only scored 9 points. So even though he completed 79% of his passes and had 33 completions, he didn't move the ball at all, similar to Perez, and they only scored 9 points. I think this game will be really ugly. I think that this game will look kind of like a preseason football game from a quarterback perspective. Does Perez have some talent? He's got some talent, but for the most part, he is mostly just a check-down Charlie, and I think you should see both quarterbacks do relatively the same thing. Throw the ball a couple of yards down the field, run the ball, eat the clock, maybe kick some field goals in the red zone, but I don't really see many touchdowns being scored in this game. I think you should see this game finish with both teams in the single digits at the half. Could be potentially that this game goes over the 18.5 in the first half, but at some point I think both offenses will slow down as you should see both quarterbacks struggle to actually push the ball downfield, which should lead to a very close game. I think this game will end somewhere in the realm of 16-13 or something like that. So for me, I think that this total is a bit too high. Also, if you compare it market-wide, this line is available at 36.5 on Fox Bet. So if you actually are shopping around trying to find a better line, 37 is actually a pretty good deal considering the lines that are available on other books. But other than that, though, based on the quarterback play alone, I have to lean to the under. And for that reason, the play of the day for March 7th will be on the under 37 between the Guardians and the Renegades, and that one is available at minus 110 on FanDuel. Now, looking at the college basketball card, I'll give out some leans. This game's about to start, so I'm not going to give out a lean on that. But I'm going to lean to Penn State minus 7. That game kicks off at 4 p.m. Penn State smacked Northwestern in the first meeting. Northwestern's been an absolute disaster, been probably the worst team in the entire Big Ten. Penn State, even though they have struggled a bit lately, that was against Michigan State in some higher level competition. Northwestern is just not that good. I think Penn State should open up with a solid first half, and I think that will carry over into the second because I just think that they are the more talented team. Lean to Penn State on that one. Other than that, I'm going to lean to Syracuse minus 1.5 against Miami. Miami, even though they're at home, has been struggling lately. Ended up losing to Virginia by 2 in their last game. Very low-scoring game, 46-44, I believe. But Syracuse actually been playing a lot better lately offensively, and I think that they should be able to score enough points to win this game. Plus, even though Syracuse's defense has not been great this season, their defense is still a unique look, and I think Miami will struggle with it early on, so lean to the orange on that one. Other than that, what else do I like? I'm going to lean to San Diego State here, minus 5 against Utah State. I know San Diego State got off to a very slow start in the first half of each of their first 2 games in the tournament, but for the spot alone, I have to lean to San Diego State. Utah State played the night game yesterday against Wyoming. Game was very close, but now they finished their game rough. I don't even remember what time they finished their game. It was very late. I think it was past midnight East Coast time. So now that they have to have a quick turnaround to play in the title game the day later, I just think it's a really bad spot for Utah State. I think this game will be close for a half, but I think San Diego State, led by Malachi Flynn, will make enough plays to win this game by around 8 or 9. Utah State has talent, but at the end of the day, I just think that this spot is a little bit too much, and I think fatigue will set in the second half. So lean to the Aztecs on that one. Other than that, I'm going to lean to Dayton minus 20. I know George Washington is an awful team in their conference, and I know that Dayton just absolutely smacked Rhode Island on the road in their last game. Even though money has come in on George Washington, you might say that the spread looks a bit high for a conference game. It probably is, but Dayton is a well-oiled machine, and I don't think that George Washington has any hopes of stopping anybody. So for me, I'll lean to Dayton. I think they'll win that game by 25. So lean to the Flyers on that one. Other than that, though, we are going to be having one of our first NCAA tournament berths tonight, as you have Murray State playing against Belmont in the conference title game. Belmont's currently laying 3 against Murray State. I'm actually going to lean to Murray State on that one. Belmont, I watched a bit of their game yesterday against Eastern Kentucky. Really just wasn't impressed. Eastern Kentucky was terrible all year. Belmont's offense looked like a disaster. And even though Belmont is favored in this game, it would not surprise me to see Murray State win because this game will be played on a neutral. Murray State has been a very underrated team so far this season. After they lost Morant, nobody talked about them, but they actually have one of the best records in the conference. This game should be close. I think Murray State should be able to keep this game close throughout. So for me, I think there's value on Murray State. Lean to the Racers on that one. And other than that, that's pretty much all my thoughts for college basketball. Now looking at the NBA. A really unimpressive card. I would have leaned to Houston, but then Westbrook got ruled out, and I'm not really that interested in that game. But looking at the actual card here, I have to lean to Memphis minus 6.5. Both teams played yesterday. Trae Young's currently questionable as he is dealing with flu-like symptoms, and Memphis just beat Atlanta by 40-plus about a week ago. So for me, I'll lean to Memphis, and they'll win that game pretty easily. Other than that, though, I'm going to have to lean to the over 231 between the Trailblazers and Kings. Even though the Trailblazers played yesterday, they got absolutely torched by Aaron Baines yesterday, and they ended up giving up 120-plus points. Each of the first 3 meetings this season have totaled at least 234 between the Kings and Trailblazers. I think this game will be pretty high scoring. Both teams have the ability to shoot the lights out from the outside. I'll lean to the over. I think both teams should get into at least 115, so lean to the over in that one. Those are my thoughts on the NBA, though. Now, looking quickly at the UFC, there are a couple of UFC fights that I found interesting. The first one I'm going to talk about is going to be on a matchup between Vieira and Safarov. One of the most interesting lines I've ever seen in UFC. Vieira is one of the best submission guys, arguably the UFC's ever had. He's relatively new to the octagon, but if you've looked at his resume from grappling and submissions, he is one of the best of all time. He's won a ton of gold medals in the Submission World Championships and the grappling competitions he's been in. I believe his record is 109. So he's absolutely insane. And him to win by submission in this fight is minus 160, which is absolutely unheard of to me. I've never seen anything like it in my life. At the end of the day, I think Vieira should win. Him in the first round is minus 110. I would have to lean to it, potentially submission in the first round if you can get that. I think that if he's going to win this fight, and it is going to be by submission, I think that he probably will just run through this guy. So lean to submission first round. Will I bet on it? No. I'll probably put a sprinkle on submission second round because that price is available at plus 650. So as long as Safarov actually survives the first round, plus 650 is a pretty good deal for one of the best submission guys in the UFC currently. So lean to him on that one. Other than that, you have the return of Sean O'Malley. He's laying 350. I think he will probably win. I'm going to lean to the under, though, in the Emmers fight. Both fighters have had the history of knocking out their opponents, and I think you should see this game turn into a bit of a stand-up, just absolute war. So for me, I think somebody will get their head taken off in the first 2.5 rounds. Lean to the under in that one. But for the main events here, for the main fights, I'm going to lean to Welly. I do like Joanna, but I really just think that Welly's too big for her, and I think that she will knock her out. So I would lean to the under. I think Welly will win by knockout. And other than that, you have Adesanya versus Romero. I'm actually going to lean to the over here. I think this fight will go to a decision. Romero, even though he has the knockout power and the ability to take anyone's head off, Adesanya is very unique with his movement, and I think he will be able to keep Romero at a distance by using his very unique brand of striking to try to keep Romero off guard. Meanwhile, Romero's very tough. I don't think he's going to go down by knockout or anything like that. But I think you should see this fight be a relatively long one. And I think Adesanya knows better than to charge in against Romero, who has the ability to take anybody out with one strike. So for me, I'll lean to the over in that one. I think that match should turn into a decision. And I'll lean to Adesanya by decision on that one. But the play that I once again is going to be under 37. In the Guardians Renegades XFL game, and that will be taking place at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. That's good for the installment of Scott's Selections here for Saturday, March 7th. Good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.